People who have had somebody die for you. What is your story? It might not count, since it wasn't a person, but I think it keeps with the spirit of the question, so here goes. When I was about 10 or so, we lived on a farm. We had an Australian blue heeler named Smokey. He was an amazing dog, full of love for anyone he met. Smokey lived in a huge pen behind the barn, and it was my job to feed him and get his water when I got out of school. So one day I go out to the pen and start to open the gate. Smokey was acting very strange. He was pacing back and forth, the ridge of fur on his neck raised, and when I made a move to step over into the pen, he growled at me. This was new. Smokey had never even growled at me when we were roughhousing, so something was up. I kinda stepped back as he bared his teeth at me. I was scared, and the first thing that crossed my mind was that he had been bitten by something rabid. So I closed the gate and start walking around the pen. As I moved away from the gate, he trotted along the fence, tongue lolling, happy grin on his face, just like always. At this point I was super confused, but decided just to push the damn dog out of the way and feed him, whether he liked it or not. So I go back to the gate. Smokey follows, and once again as I made to step in, he starts growling. I was only around 10 at the time, but he wasn't a huge dog, so I kinda pushed him with my foot to get him out of the way, and Smokey bit me. He lunged up and bit me right below the knee. I was wearing jeans, so it didn't break the skin, but I was scared shitless of my old friend. I fell backwards out of the pen and then ran for the house. I told my grandma something was wrong with Smokey and that he had tried to bite me. She too was afraid of rabies, but since there weren't puncture wounds on me, she decided to wait until my dad got home to figure out what to do. He got off work about 2 hours after this happened and immediately went out to the pen. He found Smokey dead, lying pushed up against the gate, like he had been blocking it. In the lean-to, where I would have gone to get Smoke's food, he found not one, but 2 huge rattlesnakes. When he looked over the dog's body, Smokey's face had swollen around the cheek. He had been bitten. I know it doesn't carry the same weight as if a human had consciously decided to die for me, but I know my good boy was keeping me out of that pen for a reason. My father. I was assaulted when I was 9. He confronted the man that did it, beat his ass. Man came back and shot him in the head. My mother has hated me ever since, so I lost 2 parents in one day. It has affected me in the sense that I'm hyper vigilant in protecting my son. I have read the thread to this and would like to make something clear. I don't blame my mother because I understand some things about trauma. I do appreciate the kind words some have offered. I got permission to tell this story. My cousin was swimming in a seemingly calm part of a river with a large group of people near his college. At some point he went under the water and wasn't coming back up. Under the surface was a whirlpool that had caught him and wasn't letting go. His best friend dove in to save him and managed to get my cousin out of the whirlpool, but sadly got stuck himself. My cousin wasn't breathing when they pulled him out, and they spent several minutes before they could revive him. He's okay now. Sadly, his friend didn't make it. I never knew the kid, but I think of the sacrifice he made to save my cousin all the time, and will be forever grateful for it. My mom died giving birth to me. I didn't find out about the circumstances of her death until I was 7 and my aunt said something about it to me. It messed me up for a while. I often wonder what my life would have been like if she was around. I had very little female influence in my life. I was raised by my dad and 5 brothers. Dad just treated me like one of the boys, so I grew up working on cars and motorcycles. My dad has never dated anyone since. That sometimes makes me sad too. I look at all the joy my husband brings into my life and want that for him, but I think he is just done with that part of his life. My brothers will sometimes tell stories about her. It's really the only way I know anything about her. There are some pictures around too. People tell me I look just like her and have the same attitude. I just have to take their word for it. I'm older now than she ever was. I look at all the things going on in my life and I feel incredibly guilty for taking that away from her. It makes me want to live my life in a way that I think would make her proud. My English may be weird, I'm sorry. I don't know if this counts, and I don't want to go into detail, but my mother took me when I was 8 years old from Sinuiju, North Korea with a refugee group to the north of the border of China and North Korea, and fled to Thailand, and then to South Korea. The important thing is that my family, father and my extended family still lived in Sinuiju. They did not want to leave due to fear of capture and fear of the United States propaganda, so my mother took it in her own hands. Most likely my family has perished for my mother and my actions. Edit. My mother towards the end told me that longer we stay alive, the bad memories that we have will slowly be replaced by new good memories. We just have to stay alive. My mother has since passed away. She became deranged and stressed that led to her death at an early age, and I since moved to the United States after graduating at Seoul National University in English and Business International. Because of my family's sacrifice I can have a somewhat normal life, but I can never forgive myself for my mother and my actions, and I have never told anyone. I don't deserve this life, but I have to live with it. He was a stranger. His death saved me and 3 others. The circumstance surrounding his death will never be completely known, as mistakes were made during his medical care. At the time of his death, I had already been on an artificial heart for 11 months. And was probably about 2 weeks from death myself. It had been a 3-year journey for me and my family. Getting listed for transplant and then sitting on that list was grueling. I was simply done. I received his heart on the 11th of January 14. Although the recovery still goes on, I'm alive and enjoying my life. His name was Futim, and I now know his family. My mother essentially died for me. I was 3 months old. My mother was giving me a bath in the kitchen sink. My 3-year-old brother was in a high chair having dinner. My father had just come home from performing an home inspection and was finishing his paperwork downstairs before coming up to dinner. He heard my mother cry out his name in a tone that was off, is how he put it. He sprung from his chair, ran up the stairs to the kitchen to find my mother holding me in the sink with her head down. He snatched me from her hands. She immediately collapsed on the floor unconscious. She died 3 days later in the hospital of a cerebral hemorrhage. Her last act was to keep me from drowning in the kitchen sink. My brother witnessed it all and was scarred for a long time. I never knew my mother, but that is the personification of a mother's love. Not the typical altruistic life-saving event, but I'll go on. I'm an identical triplet. We started out as quadruplets, but the 4th little homie took one for the team as he stopped developing sometime during my mother's pregnancy. This allowed the remaining clones to develop healthy and well, utilizing the nutrients that would have been split by 4 down to 3, pouring one out for you, maximum. My grandfather at the time was 94 years old. My 4-year-old daughter got the flu, which she then gave to me. I was homesick with my daughter, and I couldn't even take care of myself, let alone my daughter. My grandfather took care of the both of us. I remember waking up to him covering me with a blanket, like when I was a child. He ended up getting the flu from us, and his respiratory system couldn't take it. He passed because he took care of me and my daughter, and it makes me cry every time I remember that. One day I came home, and my fiance was gone. Detectives finally came and told me they found his body at the place he proposed to me at. They strung me on that it was a murder for months until they released his goodbye letter. He shot himself in the mouth, through the brain, because I'm not good for you. I want you to be an amazing mother, and I want *child's name to have a good father figure. It's been amazing watching you grow into who you are. So here I'm years later, still fucking confused and hurt that he says he killed himself for me and for my daughter. Still not healed and never will be. I know this isn't what Op wanted, but it's what I got. My brother died for me 13 years ago yesterday. We were alone at a beach in Mexico, no lifeguards, while our dad was taking care of some business. The water had been rough the day before, but my brother wanted to take a swim, so we went in anyway. Messing around in the water with one of those disposable underwater cameras, we got distracted and didn't realize how far we'd been pulled out. Suddenly we realized we were in a rip current and how big the waves around us were. Tried to swim back, but couldn't, and at this point I'm panicking, yelling for help, and telling my brother I don't want to die. He says I won't, stays with me, and yells for help. Someone at one of the beachside restaurants finally notices us and jumps into the water with a boogie board. They swim up to us and tell us to hang on to the board. My brother and I are holding hands in the board together. One wave later and we are ripped apart. That was the last time I saw him. I live for him every day. He was and is my best friend.